The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. What if I told you that the reason people overlook you, test you, or quietly take you for granted has nothing to do with your looks, your status, or your intelligence, but everything to do with how much self-respect you silently tolerate losing each day? You feel it when you say yes but mean no, when you explain yourself too much, when you walk away from a conversation replaying what you should have said. That subtle erosion doesn't happen overnight. It happens through small compromises you barely notice until others do. And once self-respect drops, confidence leaks, boundaries blur, presence weakens. Stoicism offers a different path, not loud dominance, not fake confidence, but an unshakable inner posture that makes people feel your worth before you ever speak. The Stoics understood something modern life has made us forget. Self-respect is not demanded, it is demonstrated. In this video, you'll discover 9 Stoic lessons that recalibrate how you carry yourself, how you respond under pressure, and how others instinctively treat you. These are not theories. They are mental positions that quietly change everything. Watch this video till the very end, because the final lesson ties all the others together, and once you grasp it, you'll never negotiate your worth again. Number 1, control your reactions, not other people. Control your reactions, not other people. That single idea, when you let it sink into your bones, changes how you carry yourself in every room, every conversation, every moment of tension. Most people lose self-respect because they spend their energy trying to manage what was never theirs to manage in the first place. Opinions, moods, decisions, approval. You've felt it before, the quiet frustration of wanting someone to act differently, speak differently, treat you differently. And every time you chase that impulse, something inside you shrinks. The Stoics saw this clearly. Epictetus warned, "You may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus can get the better of my will." That line isn't poetry. It's a manual for self-respect. Your power begins and ends with your response. The moment you accept that, you stop begging the world to cooperate and start standing upright within it. When you focus on controlling others, you hand over your inner balance like loose change. You become reactive, predictable, easy to pull off center. But when you redirect that effort inward, something steadies. You stop feeling tossed around by every word, every delay, every disappointment. Reminded himself, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Read that slowly, not once, twice. The insult doesn't wound you. The silence doesn't weaken you. The disagreement doesn't diminish you. Your interpretation does. And interpretations are adjustable. That's where your dignity lives. This lesson isn't about becoming passive or detached from life. It's about choosing sovereignty over chaos. When you master your reactions, you no longer need to dominate conversations, defend every opinion, or correct every misunderstanding. You begin to move differently, quieter, slower, more deliberate, and paradoxically, people sense that restraint as strength. Self-respect grows when you realize you don't have to win every exchange to win your life. Seneca put it plainly, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. Delay creates space. Space gives you choice. Choice restores your self-command. Notice how much of your energy leaks out when you react on impulse. A sharp reply, a sarcastic tone, a rushed explanation. Each one feels justified in the moment, but afterward there's that subtle aftertaste, regret, or at least dissatisfaction. That's your inner compass telling you something mattered more than the moment. Self-respect isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's the quiet confidence of knowing you didn't abandon yourself just to feel momentarily right. When you stop trying to steer other people's behavior, you free yourself to steer your own. Here's the shift you're being asked to make. Replace the question, "How do I make them understand?" with "How do I choose my response?" That question alone recalibrates your posture toward life. You stop negotiating with uncontrollable forces and start investing in what is always available to you: your judgment, your patience, your restraint. Epictetus framed this as the core discipline. Some things are up to you, and some things are not. Self-respect blooms the moment you stop confusing the two. This practice is uncomfortable at first. You'll feel the urge to jump in, to correct, to prove, to react. Let that urge rise without obeying it. That pause is not weakness. It's training. Think of it as strengthening a muscle that's been ignored for years. Each time you don't react immediately, you reinforce the belief that you are not at the mercy of circumstances. Over time, that belief becomes embodied. You start trusting yourself more because you've proven, quietly, repeatedly, that you can hold your ground without force. To turn this into a daily habit, begin with a simple exercise. When something triggers you, don't label it good or bad. Label it external. Say it internally if you need to. External means optional. Optional means you choose how to engage. Take one full breath before responding, just one. That breath is the line between reaction and response. Over time, extend it to 2 breaths, then 3. You're not suppressing emotion, you're giving yourself command over it. That's the difference. Another practice: at the end of the day, reflect without judgment. Ask yourself where you reacted automatically and where you acted deliberately. No punishment, no praise, just observation. Did this nightly, treating reflection as mental hygiene. Each observation sharpens your awareness the next day. You begin to catch reactions earlier, sometimes before they even form into words. That's when self-respect deepens, not because life got easier, but because you got steadier. You can also rehearse mentally. Visualize situations that usually provoke you, but imagine yourself responding with calm restraint. Not silence out of fear, but silence out of choice, or a brief response without emotional excess. The Stoics believe the mind should be trained before it's tested. When the moment arrives, you won't need to improvise. You'll recognize the pattern and step into composure instead. As you practice this, something subtle happens. You stop needing others to validate your emotional reactions. You no longer look back at conversations wishing you had said more or less. There's a sense of completion, alignment. You acted in accordance with your values, not your impulses. That alignment is the foundation of self-respect, not image, not dominance, integrity. Remember this: every time you try to control someone else, you reinforce the belief that your peace depends on them. Every time you control your reaction, you prove that your peace belongs to you. That's not just philosophy, that's freedom. And freedom, when practiced daily, becomes self-respect you don't have to announce. It's felt by you first, and then, inevitably, by others. Number 2, walk away the moment your values are compromised. Self-respect begins the moment you decide that your values are not negotiable, not later, not after one more compromise, not once things settle down, right now. The Stoics understood this with brutal clarity. As Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. What he was really saying is this: the moment you betray your inner standards to keep external peace, you quietly lose yourself, and no amount of approval can compensate for that loss. You don't walk away from people because they disappoint you. You walk away the instant you disappoint yourself. Most people think self-respect grows when others treat them better. Stoicism flips that illusion on its head. Self-respect grows when you treat your principles as sacred, when you stay in situations that demand you shrink, explain, tolerate inner discomfort, or betray what you know is right. Something subtle erodes. You may not notice it immediately, but over time your posture changes. Your voice softens. Your certainty thins. You become hesitant where you once were grounded. The Stoics would say this isn't bad luck. It's a consequence. Put it plainly: if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Notice how impersonal that instruction is. No reference to pleasing anyone. No appeal to comfort, just alignment. Walking away the moment your values are compromised is not dramatic. It's clean, it's quiet, it's decisive. And most importantly, it's internal. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to justify it. You simply stop participating in anything that requires you to betray yourself. That could be a conversation, an expectation, a dynamic, or even a version of yourself that keeps negotiating what should be non-negotiable. The Stoics didn't believe in clinging. They believed in choosing. Seneca reminded us, "He who is brave is free." And bravery here doesn't mean confrontation. It means refusing to abandon your inner code for temporary ease. Here's the shift you need to make. Stop asking, "How will this look?" and start asking, "How will this feel afterward?" The body always knows when you've crossed your own line, that tightness, that dull regret, that inner voice you silence with distraction, that's your signal. Stoic self-respect isn't loud confidence. It's the calm that comes from not having to run from yourself. When you walk away early, before resentment forms, before bitterness sets in, you preserve your dignity. You don't harden. You don't need revenge. You simply choose alignment over attachment. And yes, this will cost you things. The Stoics never that. What it gives you back is far more valuable: inner solidity. When you stop tolerating what violates your values, you begin to trust yourself again. That trust becomes posture. It becomes tone. It becomes presence. People often mistake this for confidence, but it's deeper than that. It's coherence. You are no longer split between what you believe and how you behave. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That's the work, not convincing others, becoming congruent. To live this lesson, you need practice, not theory. Start with a daily alignment check. At the end of each day, ask yourself one simple question: where did I stay when I should have stepped back? No judgment, no drama, just awareness. Awareness sharpens instinct. Instinct strengthens boundaries. Next, write down 3 values you refuse to negotiate, not ideals. Values you are willing to lose comfort for. Keep them short, clear, memorable. Then during the day, notice when a choice nudges you away from them. That moment of hesitation is your training ground. Pause, breathe, choose in favor of your values even if your voice shakes internally, especially then. Another exercise: rehearse walking away in your mind, not with anger, with calm. Visualize yourself choosing silence, distance, or disengagement the instant your inner line is crossed. This conditions your nervous system to associate self-respect with peace, not fear. The Stoics trained their minds long before the moment arrived. As wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Each moment of temptation to compromise becomes an opportunity to strengthen your spine. Remember this: you are not responsible for how others respond to your standards. You are only responsible for honoring them. When you stay rooted in your values, your self-respect no longer rises and falls with approval. It stabilizes, it deepens, it becomes something you carry quietly everywhere. And once you experience that steadiness, you'll realize something profound. You no longer fear walking away, because you finally understand what's truly at stake. Not the relationship, not the outcome, but the relationship you have with yourself. Choose that relationship every time. Number 3, stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. There comes a point in your growth where you realize that explaining yourself isn't clarity, it's self-betrayal. You feel it in your body first, a tightening in your chest, a quiet irritation, a sense that no matter how carefully you choose your words, they are not being received in good faith. This is the moment Stoicism urges you to pause, not push harder. Wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That sentence alone carries a hard truth. Your integrity does not require an audience's approval. When someone is committed to misunderstanding you, explanations become a performance, not communication. And every performance chips away at your self-respect. You've been taught, subtly and repeatedly, that if you just explain better, calmer, smarter, People will finally see your intentions. But Stoic wisdom cuts through that illusion. Epictetus warned that if you want to improve, you must be willing to be seen as foolish or misunderstood by those who don't share your values. That's not weakness. That's freedom. When you stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided who you are, you reclaim your energy. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop translating your soul into a language they never wanted to learn. Here's the shift you need to make. Explanations are for the curious, not the hostile. Clarification is for those who are open, not for those collecting ammunition. Once you see this clearly, something inside you relaxes. You no longer feel the urge to defend every choice, every boundary, every silence. You understand that self-respect grows when your actions are aligned with your principles, not when they are approved by everyone watching. Seneca said, "The approval of the crowd is proof of a bad thing." Read that again, slowly. Let it settle. If everyone understands you, if everyone agrees with you, you may be living far below your standard. You don't owe explanations for your healing. You don't owe footnotes for your boundaries. You don't owe a closing argument for walking away from what drains you. Stoicism teaches that your responsibility ends with acting rightly, not with managing how others interpret your actions. When you over-explain, you place your self-image in someone else's hands. And the moment you do that, your self-respect becomes fragile. It rises and falls with their mood, their bias, their willingness to listen. This lesson asks you to practice restraint. Not silence born of fear, but silence rooted in self-command. There is a difference. One shrinks you, the other stabilizes you. The Stoics didn't avoid speech, they avoided waste. Words were used with intention. If speaking would clarify truth, they spoke. If it would only feed confusion or ego, you are allowed to do the same. You are allowed to say nothing and let your consistency speak. You are allowed to let time expose what explanations never could. Now, this doesn't mean becoming cold or dismissive. It means becoming selective. It means recognizing when a conversation has turned into a courtroom where you are endlessly on trial. The moment you feel compelled to convince rather than express, to defend rather than state, to plead rather than stand, step back. That's your signal. That's your discipline calling you forward. Self-respect grows when you trust your inner compass more than external noise. Start practicing this deliberately. Here's a simple exercise. For the next week, notice every time you feel the urge to explain yourself. Don't act on it immediately. Pause. Ask yourself one question: is this person seeking understanding or control? If it's understanding, speak calmly and briefly. If it's control, choose silence or a short, grounded statement. No justifications, no over-detailing, no emotional footnotes. Then observe how you feel afterward. Lighter, clearer, more intact. Another practice: reduce your explanations by half. Literally. Say what needs to be said, then stop. Let the discomfort exist. Let the pause breathe. You'll notice something surprising. Most people fill the silence themselves. And you'll realize how often your explanations were never needed in the first place. This trains your nervous system to associate silence with strength, not danger. Remember, Stoicism isn't about being misunderstood on purpose. It's about being unshaken by misunderstanding when it happens. You are not here to manage narratives. You are here to live in alignment. When your actions are clean, your conscience is quiet. And a quiet conscience is the foundation of real self-respect. So stop explaining yourself to those who have already closed their ears. Choose dignity over debate. Choose composure over compulsion. Choose to stand so firmly in who you are that misunderstanding no longer feels like a threat, but like a small price paid for freedom. This is not withdrawal from the world. This is mastery within it. And the more you practice it, the more unshakable your self-respect becomes. Number 4, do the right thing even when no one is watching. Doing the right thing when no one is watching is one of the quietest disciplines you will ever practice, and one of the most powerful. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't bring applause. No one claps when you choose restraint instead of indulgence, integrity instead of convenience, discipline instead of comfort. And yet this is where self-respect is either built or quietly destroyed. The Stoics understood this deeply. Wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Notice how he doesn't mention witnesses. He doesn't mention approval. He points directly to action, private, unobserved, uncompromising action. This lesson isn't about morality as performance. It's about alignment. When what you do matches what you believe, even in silence, something inside you settles. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop needing permission to respect who you are. Most people think self-respect comes from achievement or recognition. It doesn't. It comes from knowing with certainty that you didn't betray yourself when you could have gotten away with it. Every time you cut a corner in private, something weakens. Not loudly, not dramatically. It's subtle, almost polite. But over time, that erosion shows up as hesitation, self-doubt, and the need for validation. Seneca warned, the first and greatest punishment of the sinner is the conscience of sin. You already know this feeling. That quiet discomfort that follows a small compromise. That inner tension when your actions don't match your standards. Stoicism teaches you to remove that tension at the root by refusing to split yourself in two. When you act rightly only when observed, you train yourself to depend on an audience. Your behavior becomes conditional. But when you do the right thing in private, you build an internal authority. You no longer need surveillance to behave well. You become governed from within. This is where real self-respect lies, not in how others see you, but in how you experience yourself when the room is empty. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." He was pointing at the courage required to act well without social reward. Sometimes doing the right thing feels unrewarded. Sometimes it even feels invisible. But invisibility is not weakness. It is training. You don't need to make this complicated. Start by deciding that your private standards matter more than your public image. That decision alone changes how you move. When temptation appears, pause and ask yourself a simple question. Would I still do this if no one ever knew? Not would I get caught. Not would I be judged. Just, would I respect myself afterward? That question cuts through rationalization. It brings you back to the only opinion that truly stays with you. Reminded himself, it is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. Living, in the Stoic sense, means acting in harmony with reason and virtue, not convenience. Here where the shift happens. When you consistently choose what is right in private, your confidence stops being loud. It becomes grounded. You don't need to prove anything because you already know who you are. This is why Stoics appear calm under pressure. They are not performing virtue. They have practiced it alone, repeatedly, without witnesses. That practice creates an inner steadiness no compliment can give and no insult can take away. You begin to trust yourself. And trust is the foundation of self-respect. To turn this into a habit, give yourself simple, repeatable exercises. Each evening, take a few minutes for quiet review. Ask yourself where you acted in alignment today and where you didn't. No drama, no self-attack, just clarity. Seneca advised, when the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day. You can do the same. This daily audit strengthens your awareness. It teaches you to catch small compromises before they become patterns. Awareness precedes discipline. Another practice is intentional restraint. Choose once a day to deny yourself something purely because you can, not as punishment but as proof of agency. This could be comfort, distraction, or indulgence. The goal isn't deprivation, it's reminding yourself that you are not ruled by impulse. Epictetus taught that freedom is found in mastery over desire. Each small act of restraint in private reinforces the belief that you are in control of your choices. That belief compounds. Also, redefine success for yourself. Success is not being seen as good. Success is being good when unseen. Write this down. Repeat it until it feels obvious. When you stop outsourcing your standards, you stop living. You act from principle, not pressure. And principles, once internalized, simplify life. Decisions become cleaner. Regret becomes rarer. Self-respect becomes steady instead of fragile. You might notice resistance at first. Your mind will argue. It will say, this doesn't matter. No one will know. That's exactly the point. You are the one who knows, and you are the one who lives with the consequences. Every private choice is a vote for the person you are becoming. Over time, those votes create identity. Not the identity you advertise, but the one you inhabit. So start today. Choose one small, unobserved action and do it right, not because it's impressive, not because it's rewarded, but because it aligns you. Then do it again tomorrow, and the next day, quietly, consistently. You'll notice something change: your posture, your decisions, your tolerance for nonsense. That's self-respect taking root, and once it does, you won't need anyone watching. Number 5, detach from approval and validation. Detaching from approval and validation is one of the most direct ways to rebuild your self-respect, because it removes the quiet dependence that drains your confidence without you noticing. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That line isn't about self-insult. It's about freedom. The moment you stop needing others to confirm your worth, you step out of a psychological cage. You stop negotiating with opinions. You stop shrinking or performing. You stand on your own judgment, and that changes how you carry yourself from the inside out. Most of the pressure you feel isn't coming from life itself. It's coming from the silent habit of asking, was that good enough? Did I say the right thing? Do they approve of me now? The Stoics would tell you that every time you ask those questions, you hand your peace to someone else. Wrote, "I do my duty, other things trouble me not." Read that slowly. Not I do my duty and wait for applause, just duty, just alignment. When your actions are guided by your values instead of reactions to praise or criticism, self-respect stops being fragile. It becomes rooted. You don't detach from approval by pretending you don't care. That's a mask. True detachment is quieter. It's when approval simply stops being the ruler of your decisions. You act because it feels correct, measured, and honest, not because you're hopping for a reaction. This is uncomfortable at first. Your mind will reach for reassurance. It will crave a nod, a signal, a response. That's conditioning. And like all conditioning, it can be undone with practice. Here's the shift you need to make. Stop asking whether people like what you're doing and start asking whether you respect the way you're doing it. That question cuts deeper. It forces responsibility. It also removes the illusion that validation equals value. Seneca warned, "He who depends on another does not possess himself." Every time you chase approval, you outsource ownership of your identity. Every time you detach, you reclaim it. Self-respect grows when your internal standards become louder than external noise. That doesn't mean you ignore feedback or isolate yourself. It means feedback becomes information, not a verdict. Praise doesn't inflate you. Criticism doesn't collapse you. You stay centered, calm, upright. That stability is magnetic, but more importantly, it's peaceful. And peace is impossible when your worth is constantly up for review. Start noticing how often your behavior is shaped by anticipation. Not events, anticipation. The imagined reaction, the imagined judgment. The Stoics trained themselves to live in reality, not in the theater of other people's minds. You can do the same. When you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. When you want to justify, pause again. Often, self-respect is built not by adding something, but by removing unnecessary performances. One practical exercise is daily value alignment. At the end of the day, ask yourself 3 simple questions. Did I act according to my principles? Did I compromise myself to be accepted? Did I speak or act from fear of judgment? Answer honestly without punishment. This isn't about guilt. It's about awareness. Over time, you'll see patterns, and once you see them, you can change them. Another practice is intentional silence, not avoidance, intentional restraint. When your instinct is to seek reassurance, say nothing. Sit with the discomfort. Let it pass. You're training your nervous system to realize that nothing bad happens when approval is absent. This builds inner strength faster than any motivational phrase ever could. You can also practice internal validation. Before looking outward, affirm your own judgment. I acted with integrity. I stayed calm. I didn't betray myself. Say it privately. Say it deliberately. The Stoics believe that a man must become his own witness. When you learn to acknowledge your own conduct, applause loses its grip. Detachment from validation doesn't make you cold, it makes you grounded. You become less reactive, more deliberate, you stop bending. And when you stop bending, self-respect rises naturally. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, firmly, permanently. Remember this, approval is fleeting. Respect, especially self-respect, is cumulative. Each moment you choose principle over praise, you strengthen it. Each time you walk your path without checking who's watching, you reinforce it. This is Stoic power, not domination, not arrogance, but sovereignty over your inner world. So take action today. Reduce one approval-seeking habit, delay one explanation, withhold one unnecessary justification, replace it with calm presence, with silence, with certainty, and keep going. Because the more you detach from validation, the more unshakable your self-respect becomes. And once that foundation is solid, no opinion can move you. Number 6, keep your word, especially to yourself. When you say you will do something and you don't, something subtle but corrosive happens inside you. It's quiet. No one else notices, but you do. A small fracture forms between who you claim to be and who you actually are. Over time, that fracture widens and self-respect leaks out through it. This is why the Stoics treated one's word as sacred, especially the promises made in private when no applause is possible. Wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That sentence isn't about impressing others. It's about alignment. When your actions match your intentions, your inner voice grows steadier. You trust yourself, and that trust becomes the foundation of self-respect. You don't lose self-respect all at once. You lose it in fragments. Every time you postpone what you committed to, every time you negotiate with yourself after you already decided, every time you quietly break a promise and excuse it with logic that sounds convincing but feels hollow, Stoicism cuts through that noise. Epictetus warned, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Notice the order, decide, then act. Not decide, reconsider, delay, rationalize, and dilute. Self-respect grows when your internal commands carry weight, when your mind knows that once you say this will be done, the body follows. Keeping your word to yourself is not about rigid perfection, it's about integrity and motion. The Stoics understood human weakness, they simply refused to let weakness lead. When you honor your commitments, even the small and unseen ones, you begin to experience a rare calm. You stop arguing with yourself. You stop bargaining. You stop feeling fragmented. There is a quiet power in knowing that you don't need external pressure to move. You move because you decided to. That is dignity. That is inner authority. And others sense it, not because you announce it, but because your presence carries consistency. Most people try to boost self-respect by chasing confidence, approval, or achievement. Stoicism takes a sharper route. It asks, can you rely on yourself? If the answer is uncertain, no amount of praise will fix it. Seneca put it plainly, what progress, you ask, have I made? I have begun to be a friend to myself. Friendship with yourself begins when your words are not empty currency. When you promise effort, restraint, discipline, or focus, and you follow through, you stop feeling divided. You feel whole, and wholeness is the soil where self-respect grows. You may notice resistance arise the moment you commit to this practice. That resistance is not a signal to stop, it's proof that the habit matters. The mind will offer delays dressed up as reason. It will whisper, later is wiser, flexibility is smarter, this one time doesn't count. Stoicism teaches you to see those thoughts without obeying them, not with aggression, with calm refusal. You don't argue, you act. Each follow-through becomes a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. Over time, those votes compound into identity. Here is where practice matters. Start with promises that are small enough to be undeniable yet meaningful enough to matter. Decide in advance what kept means. Vagueness erodes discipline. Clarity strengthens it. Write your commitments briefly and precisely, not to impress yourself but to remove ambiguity. Then treat that written word as a contract. When resistance appears, pause not to negotiate but to remember why you chose this. The Stoics called this the power of choice. Exercise it deliberately. Another exercise is evening review, a practice used privately. At the end of the day, ask yourself 3 questions. What did I promise myself today? Which promises did I keep? Where did I fall short and why? Do this without self-attack. Judgment weakens resolve. Honest accounting strengthens it. When you miss, don't excuse it. Adjust the system. Reduce the scope. Sharpen the intention. Then recommit. Self-respect isn't built by never failing. It's built by refusing to lie to yourself about failure. You can also train this habit by creating non-negotiables. These are actions you perform regardless of mood. Stoicism is clear on this point. Moods are not commanders, they are weather. Decide which behaviors define you even on low-energy days. Keep them minimal, keep them consistent. When you honor non-negotiables, you send a powerful signal inward. I am governed by principle, not impulse. That signal changes how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you decide. As this practice deepens, something unexpected happens. You stop seeking motivation. You stop waiting for the right feeling. You begin to act from identity, and identity is stable. Self-respect stops being something you chase and becomes something you protect. You don't want to break your word anymore, not because you're afraid of guilt, but because it feels beneath you. That shift, from external enforcement to internal standard, is one of the Stoic path's greatest rewards. Remember, no one else needs to witness this. In fact, its power depends on privacy. The world sees the outcome, not the discipline, and that's enough. When you keep your word, especially to yourself, you become someone whose presence feels solid, calm, trustworthy, grounded, not because you claim strength, but because you practice it daily, quietly, relentlessly. Start today. Decide one promise, keep it. Then do it again tomorrow. Your self-respect is listening. Number 7. Accept discomfort as the price of self-mastery. Accepting discomfort as the price of self-mastery is one of those ideas that sounds simple until you actually live it. And yet, this single lesson sits at the core of everything the Stoics taught about dignity, strength, and self-respect. Not the loud, performative kind of confidence, but the quiet kind that settles into your bones and changes how you carry yourself when no one is watching. Wrote, choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been. That line isn't poetic comfort. It's a challenge. It's a reminder that mastery begins the moment you stop running from discomfort and start using it as training. Because every time you avoid discomfort, you teach yourself that your impulses are in charge. And every time you endure it willingly, you prove, without words, that you are. Self-respect doesn't come from feeling good all the time. It comes from knowing you can stay steady when things don't feel good, when you choose the harder option over the easier escape, when you resist the urge to numb, distract, complain, or quit. Discomfort is the toll you pay to cross from being ruled by your moods into being governed by your principles. There is no shortcut around it. The Stoics never promised comfort. They promised freedom, and freedom is demanding. You already know this on some level. You felt it in moments where you did the difficult thing instead of the convenient one, where you held your tongue instead of reacting, where you stayed disciplined when motivation disappeared. Notice how those moments linger differently. They don't inflate your ego. They anchor you. They create a quiet pride that doesn't need applause. That's self-respect being built in real time. Epictetus was blunt about this. He said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, accept the discomfort of resistance, misunderstanding, and restraint. Accept that growth often feels awkward, lonely, and unrewarded at first. The person who avoids discomfort may look relaxed, but the person who accepts it moves with an inner solidity that others instinctively feel. Discomfort is not punishment, it's feedback. It's the sensation of friction between who you are now and who you're becoming. When you stop interpreting that friction as something to escape, it transforms. It becomes proof that you're doing meaningful work on yourself. The Stoics understood this deeply. They trained themselves to voluntarily face hardship, not because suffering is noble, but because mastery requires exposure to resistance. And here's the part most people miss. Every avoided discomfort quietly erodes your self-trust. Each time you say, "I'll do it later," "It's not that serious," or "I deserve a break," when you know you're compromising yourself, something subtle happens. You stop believing your own standards. Over time, that disconnect becomes self-disrespect, not because you failed once, but because you trained yourself to look away when discipline was required. Seneca captured this when he wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom, in the Stoic sense, isn't the absence of limits. It's the ability to endure discomfort without surrendering your values. And every time you choose discomfort consciously, you reclaim a piece of that freedom. This is why Stoic practice often begins with small, voluntary discomforts, not dramatic gestures, not extremes, just deliberate friction, pausing instead of reacting, finishing what you start even when enthusiasm fades, sitting with an uncomfortable emotion without rushing to escape it. These moments don't look impressive from the outside, but they do something powerful internally. They align your actions with your ideals, and alignment is the foundation of self-respect. You don't need to force yourself into suffering. That was never the point. The point is to stop running, to stay present when things feel inconvenient, boring, tense, or uncertain, to remain composed when your instincts want relief. Each time you do, you reinforce the identity of someone who can be trusted with responsibility, starting with responsibility for yourself. Here's a simple Stoic exercise you can begin today. Once a day, notice one moment where discomfort appears. Don't dramatize it. Don't label it as good or bad, just notice it. Then ask yourself one question: what would a disciplined version of me do here? Not the perfect version, not the heroic version, just the disciplined one. Then act accordingly, calmly, quietly, without making a story out of it. Another practice the Stoics used was negative visualization, not to become anxious, but to reduce fear of discomfort. Spend a few moments imagining yourself enduring inconvenience, delay, or emotional tension without collapsing or complaining. See yourself staying steady. This trains your nervous system to realize something important. Discomfort is survivable, temporary, often exaggerated by anticipation. Once you internalize that, it loses much of its power over you. The more you do this, the less you need external validation. You stop chasing approval because you already know who you are. You've tested yourself. You've stayed present in difficulty. You've kept promises to yourself when it would have been easy to break them. That kind of self-respect can't be taken from you. It doesn't fluctuate with praise or criticism. It's built, layer by layer, through acceptance of discomfort. And over time, something shifts. Discomfort stops feeling like an enemy and starts feeling like a signal that you're on the edge of growth, a signal that you're strengthening the part of you that doesn't need constant comfort to function. You become less reactive, less dependent, less fragile, not because life got easier, but because you got steadier. Remember this: Anyone can feel confident when conditions are perfect. Stoic self-respect is different. It's forged when conditions are imperfect and you remain composed anyway. When you accept discomfort not as a flaw in the process, but as the process itself. So don't ask how to eliminate discomfort. Ask how to meet it with dignity. Choose it when it aligns with your values. Stay with it long enough to learn from it. Because every time you do, you're telling yourself, without words, that you are capable of self-mastery. And that belief changes everything. Number 8, speak less, observe more. Speak less, observe more. At first, that sounds almost too simple, like advice you've heard 1,000 times and quietly ignored. But this single discipline has the power to rebuild your self-respect from the inside out, because it forces you to confront the habit that drains it the most, the need to constantly react. The Stoics understood something most people still miss. Your words do not increase your value. Your awareness does. Every unnecessary sentence you release into the world is often an attempt to control perception, to defend an image, or to secure approval. And every time you do that, even subtly, you hand a piece of your self-respect away. When you choose silence instead, not out of fear but out of command, you reclaim that power. Reminded himself, be content to seem what you really are. That line only makes sense when you stop narrating yourself. When you speak less, you stop performing. You stop trying to manage how others interpret you. You let your presence stand on its own. Observation sharpens you. It pulls your attention outward, away from the restless need to be seen, and inward toward clarity. You begin to notice how often words are used to fill discomfort, not to express truth. You start catching the impulse to interrupt, to explain, to justify, to correct. And in that pause, something shifts. You realize you don't need to rush to be understood. You don't need to rush at all. Epictetus was blunt about this. He said we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we may listen twice as much as we speak. This isn't about being passive or shrinking yourself. It's about precision. When you speak less, every word carries more weight. Your silence becomes intentional rather than empty. You stop leaking energy through constant commentary. Self-respect grows when your actions and your inner posture say, I don't need to announce myself. You feel it internally before anyone else ever notices it externally. There is a deep psychological shift that happens when you observe more. You stop living inside assumptions. You stop reacting to half-formed interpretations. You see patterns instead of moments. You notice tone, timing, contradictions, and motivations without getting emotionally entangled in them. Observation gives you leverage over your own mind. Instead of being pulled into every emotional ripple, you stand still and let clarity come to you. That stillness is not weakness. It is restraint. And restraint is one of the highest forms of strength the Stoics admired. Seneca warned that nature has given us 1 tongue and 2 ears, so we may hear more and speak less. He also understood that excessive speech is often rooted in insecurity. When you talk too much, you're often trying to prove you belong, that you're smart enough, interesting enough, worthy enough. But self-respect is built the moment you stop auditioning. When you speak less, you're no longer bargaining for validation. You're grounded in the quiet confidence that your worth doesn't depend on constant expression. This habit also forces you to confront your impulses. Silence reveals what you usually cover with noise. It shows you impatience. It shows you irritation. It shows you the urge to dominate conversations or escape discomfort. When you don't immediately speak, you feel these impulses rise and fall. And each time you don't obey them, you strengthen your self-command. Stoicism is not about suppressing emotion. It's about not being ruled by it. Observation gives you that space. It creates a gap between stimulus and response, and inside that gap, your self-respect takes root. You begin to notice something else as well. Most people speak without thinking. They react without reflection. They explain themselves endlessly. When you choose a different path, you feel distinct, not superior, but grounded. You don't rush to fill silence. You don't chase the last word. You don't compete for attention. You conserve your energy, and energy conserved is self-respect preserved. There's also a quiet authority that comes from measured speech. When you do speak, it's deliberate, it's anchored, it's not defensive or excessive. You're not trying to convince, you're stating. And paradoxically, people listen more when you talk less. Not because you demand attention, but because your words aren't cheap. The Stoics never confused silence with submission. They saw it as discipline. They knew that the person who controls their tongue controls their reactions, and the person who controls their reactions controls their life. To turn this into a lived habit, you need practice, not theory. Start with a simple daily discipline. Before speaking, ask yourself one question. Does this need to be said, or do I just feel the urge to say it? That pause alone is transformative. It interrupts autopilot. Another exercise is intentional silence. Choose moments in your day where you deliberately say nothing, even when you could. Not as avoidance, but as observation. Notice what rises inside you. Notice how quickly the discomfort fades. Notice how little is actually lost. A powerful Stoic exercise is end-of-day reflection. At night, review your conversations without judgment. Where did you speak from clarity, and where did you speak from impulse? Where could silence have served you better? This isn't about regret. It's about refinement. Use this exact practice to sharpen his character. Each reflection strengthens your awareness for the next day. You can also train observation directly. When you're listening, don't plan your reply. Don't rehearse your opinion, just listen. Feel how rare that is. Feel how it steadies you. Observation pulls you out of ego and into presence. And presence is the foundation of self-respect. Over time, something subtle but powerful happens. You stop needing to assert yourself verbally. You stop reacting to every stimulus. You become harder to provoke, harder to manipulate, harder to unsettle. Your self-respect becomes quiet, internal, unshakable. You don't feel the need to explain who you are. You simply live it. Speaking less and observing more is not about withdrawing from the world. It's about meeting it with discipline. It's about choosing awareness over noise, restraint over impulse, and depth over display. This is how the Stoics trained themselves to stand firm in chaos. And this is how you rebuild self-respect, not by demanding it, but by embodying it, silently, consistently, and on your own terms. Start today. Pause before you speak. Let observation lead. Let silence sharpen you. And watch how quickly your inner posture changes when you no longer give your words away without purpose. Number 9. Choose inner peace over the need to be right. Choosing inner peace over the need to be right is one of the most quietly powerful decisions you can make. It sounds simple on the surface, almost too soft for a world that rewards dominance, arguments, and being seen as correct. But the Stoics knew something most people still miss. The hunger to be right is rarely about truth. It's about ego. And every time you let ego take the wheel, you hand your peace to forces you don't control. As wrote, how much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it? You don't lose your self-respect when someone disagrees with you. You lose it when you feel compelled to fight, correct, or dominate just to soothe your inner tension. You've probably noticed this already, even if you haven't named it. The moment you feel the urge to win a conversation, your body tightens, your breathing changes, your mind narrows, you stop listening. You're no longer grounded, you're reacting. The Stoics would say this is the moment reason steps aside and passion takes over. And the irony is brutal. The more you chase being right, the less calm, dignified, and respected you become, by others and by yourself. Self-respect doesn't come from overpowering opposing views. It comes from knowing you don't need to. Epictetus put it plainly, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That line stings because it goes straight for the ego's weak spot. The need to be right is often the need to be seen as intelligent, superior, or justified. But Stoicism invites you to detach your worth from those external judgments. You don't need agreement to be whole. You don't need validation to be steady. When you stop fighting for intellectual dominance, something unexpected happens. You regain control over yourself, and that control feels like self-respect. This doesn't mean you abandon your principles or betray your values. It means you stop confusing peace with weakness. The Stoic chooses silence not because he has nothing to say, but because he understands timing, energy, and cost. Seneca warned, "No person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they don't have." Wanting to be right is just another craving, and like all cravings, it disturbs the mind. When you let it go, you don't shrink, you expand. Think about how often arguments linger in your mind long after they're over. The replaying, the imaginary comebacks, the quiet frustration. None of that strengthens you. It drains you. Stoicism teaches that peace is not passive, it is disciplined. Choosing inner peace over being right means you value your mental clarity more than temporary victory. You stop feeding conflicts that offer no real return. You begin to protect your inner state like something sacred. Here, where self-respect deepens. When you no longer feel the need to prove yourself, your actions slow down. Your words become deliberate. You respond instead of react. And people feel that difference immediately. Calm presence carries more weight than sharp arguments ever could. As reminded himself, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. You don't rise by mirroring chaos. You rise by refusing to let it enter you. This lesson asks you to practice restraint in moments where your old habits would normally flare up. That's where the real work is. When disagreement appears, pause. Literally pause. Notice the impulse to correct, to interrupt, to assert. Don't judge it, just see it. Then ask yourself one question. Is my peace worth more than being right now? That single question can interrupt years of conditioning. A practical exercise you can adopt immediately is this. For the next few days, allow conversations to end without closure. No final word, no summary statement, no attempt to wrap it up in your favor. Let the discomfort sit. You'll notice how much of your urge to be right is actually an urge to escape that discomfort. By staying with it, you train emotional endurance. You prove to yourself that you don't collapse without control. That alone builds self-respect. Another practice is mental reframing. When you feel challenged, silently repeat a Stoic reminder. This is outside my control. You don't control how others think, interpret, or respond. You only control your character, and character to the Stoics was everything. Winning an argument doesn't make you better. Governing yourself does. Over time, something subtle but powerful happens. You stop entering every conversation as a battlefield. You listen more, you speak less. And when you do speak, it's because you choose to, not because your ego demands it. This is not withdrawal from life. It's engagement without attachment. Seneca captured this balance perfectly. The greatest remedy for anger is delay. Delay creates space. Space creates choice. Choice creates dignity. Choosing inner peace over the need to be right is also an act of self-trust. You're telling yourself, I don't need to defend my worth. That message sinks deep. It reshapes how you carry yourself, how you respond to pressure, how you evaluate conflict. You stop measuring yourself against others and start measuring yourself against your own standards. That's the foundation of unshakable self-respect. Make this a daily reflection. At the end of the day, ask yourself where you chose peace and where you chased correctness. Don't shame yourself, observe. Improvement to the Stoics was never about perfection. It was about progress through awareness. Each moment you let go of the need to be right, you reclaim a piece of your inner authority. And that's the real reward. Not silence, not compliance, but sovereignty over your inner world. When you choose peace, you choose yourself. And there is nothing more respectable than a person who no longer needs to prove who they are. If you've stayed with me till now, understand this. Self-respect isn't something the world hands to you. It's something you decide to live by, quietly, consistently, without applause. The Stoics never waited for permission to value themselves, reminded us that the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, and the quality of your thoughts shapes the standards you refuse to betray. These 9 Stoic lessons aren't ideas meant to impress others. They're tools meant to steady you. When you stop chasing approval, when you choose discipline over impulse, when you guard your inner world like something sacred, you change how you carry yourself. And when that happens, people feel it. Not because you demand respect, but because you no longer negotiate with your own values. Remember this: the most powerful form of confidence is calm. The loudest authority is restraint. And the deepest self-respect comes from knowing you can walk away from anything that costs you your dignity. So take one lesson from this video and apply it today. Not tomorrow, today. Let your actions speak before your words ever do. If this video gave you clarity, make sure you like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. More Stoic wisdom is coming, and the next lesson might be the one that changes how you see yourself forever.